Earth had always dreamed of joining the Galactic Council. For decades, humans had sent messages, ambassadors, and scientists to show that they were ready. They wanted to be part of the galaxy, to share knowledge and learn from other worlds. Humans had studied alien languages, built ships faster than light, and created machines that could do incredible things. They thought they had a chance. But the Council had a different opinion. The Council was made of powerful alien races, each older and wiser than humans. They were enormous in size, strange in shape, and they had lived among the stars for thousands of years. When the humans arrived at the Council's Grand Hall, they were nervous but hopeful. The hall was a massive place, floating in space, with lights that shone like distant stars. Council members sat in high chairs that seemed to float in the air, looking down at the humans with curiosity. Earth's ambassador, a calm woman named Mara, stepped forward. She carried the message of humanity, explaining that humans wanted to cooperate, explore together, and share knowledge. She spoke of human inventions, medical breakthroughs, and their new space colonies. She promised that humans would bring nothing but good to the galaxy. At first there was silence. Then a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and eyes like glowing orbs spoke. "Humans," he said, "we have watched your species. We have seen your history. You are violent, reckless, and dangerous. You cannot be trusted with knowledge or power." A murmur went through the hall. Some council members nodded in agreement. Others whispered to each other, their voices strange and musical. Mara tried to explain that humans had changed, that they were learning, growing, and reaching for the stars in peace. But her words seemed to fall into a void. Another council member, this one covered in golden scales and twice the size of Mara, leaned forward. "Your species is too young. Too unpredictable. Too weak to join the council. We ban Earth from participation. You will have no voice here. You will have no power." The words hit the humans like a shockwave. Some of them gasped. Some lowered their heads. Mara felt her hands shake. She had expected resistance, but she had not expected humiliation. The council's laughter echoed in the hall, a sound that made the humans feel very small. They were seen as nothing, as an insignificant planet that had dared to dream too big. When the humans returned to Earth, the mood was somber. The ships that had carried them home were silent, floating through space as if the stars themselves mourned with them. On the ground, news of the ban spread quickly. Humans everywhere watched the council's decision on their screens. Some cried. Some argued. Some were angry. But beneath the shock, something stronger began to grow. Mara gathered the leaders of Earth. Scientists, soldiers, politicians, and engineers came together in a large hall. She spoke to them not as a diplomat, but as a human who had seen her people laughed at and rejected. "They do not see us as we are," she said. "They do not understand us. But that is their mistake. If they will not welcome us, we will make our own place in the stars. We will show them that humans are not weak. We will show them that humans are unstoppable." The idea spread like fire. Humans had always faced challenges, and they had always found a way to survive. They had fought wars on their own planet, survived disasters, and explored places no one thought they could. The council's words did not break them, they ignited them. The rejection became a spark, lighting a determination that burned brighter than any star. Plans began immediately. Scientists discussed new engines that could travel faster, ships that could protect themselves, and tools that could explore distant planets. Soldiers trained harder, learning not just weapons but strategy, teamwork, and cunning. Engineers and builders sketched enormous stations, space habitats, and fleets that could travel across galaxies. Humans began to see themselves not as the weak planet the Council called them, but as a rising power with the potential to shape the future. Children listened to stories of the Council's ban and grew up with a fire in their hearts. They wanted to fly among the stars, to discover new worlds, and to make humans respected. Every person felt the same determination. Earth would not remain small or ignored. Humans would rise. They would grow stronger. They would make a place in the galaxy where no one could laugh at them. Mara watched as humans worked. She saw their anger turn into creativity, their sadness into energy, their shame into pride. The Council had thought they were rejecting a weak species, but they had unknowingly awakened something far more powerful. Humans were no longer asking to join, they were preparing to lead. And so, Earth began its new chapter. The Council had banned them, but humans did not falter. The stars above were not closed, they were waiting. Waiting for humans to reach, waiting for humans to claim their place. The ban was not the end, it was the beginning. Humans looked at the sky with determination. They knew it would be hard. They knew the galaxy was full of dangers. But they also knew one thing. Nothing, not even the council itself, could stop them from dreaming, from fighting, and from rising. Earth had been laughed at. Earth had been banned. But Earth had a fire that no alien race could put out. And that fire was only just beginning to grow. After the council had banned Earth, humans did not waste time. The rejection had sparked determination, and now the planet was alive with energy. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, and explorers came together to plan a future that no alien race could ignore. They called it the Human Empire, though it was just beginning. It was not about ruling others, it was about proving that humans could create something great, even if the galaxy refused to accept them. The first step was technology. Human engineers worked day and night, building ships that could travel farther and faster than ever before. They designed engines that used energy in ways no one had thought possible. These ships were small at first, fast and clever rather than enormous. They could move quietly, avoid detection, and adapt to different situations. Every design was tested rigorously. Every mistake became a lesson. Soldiers trained in new ways too. Humans knew they were weaker in numbers compared to some alien fleets, but they were faster, smarter, and more unpredictable. Training focused not just on strength but on strategy, teamwork, and thinking outside the rules. They ran simulations that tested their patience, their courage, and their creativity. Every young pilot, engineer, and soldier knew one thing: humans would never be easy to defeat. Explorers and scientists looked to the stars, mapping nearby systems, studying strange planets, and testing new technologies. They discovered resources that aliens had ignored, metals that could be used to make stronger ships, and gases that could fuel engines faster than any council vessel. Humans learned quickly. They made mistakes, yes, but each mistake taught them something new. Slowly, Earth began to grow beyond its own solar system. The first human colonies were small but full of energy. They were built on planets that were harsh and distant, places others thought uninhabitable. Humans did not mind. They adapted. They built habitats that could survive storms, radiation, and extreme temperatures. They grew food using clever machines, recycled every drop of water, and created communities that thrived. Every colony was a symbol of human strength, determination, and creativity. Back on Earth, Mara and the leaders watched the progress. They were careful, planning each step, but they also encouraged bold moves. Humans learned to take calculated risks. They tested new weapons, but only as a last measure. They focused first on survival, growth, and learning. And yet, every new ship, every new colony was a challenge to the Council. It was a silent message: humans would not wait for permission. Humans would make their own place. As colonies spread, humans began to communicate with alien races who had been overlooked by the Council. Some were small planets, weak or ignored, who were tired of being controlled. Humans offered them friendship, trade, and protection. Many were curious and some cautious, but humans showed respect and fairness. Slowly they built allies. The network of colonies grew not just for humans, but for others who wanted freedom from the Council's control. Every success made humans bolder. Scientists invented energy shields for ships, weapons that could disable enemy systems without destroying planets, and AI that could assist in exploration. Engineers built massive orbital stations, capable of housing hundreds of people and ships. Soldiers became experts in defense and tactics, training constantly. No matter the challenge, humans adapted, improved, and moved forward. Even when setbacks happened, humans never gave up. A ship might fail in a test, a colony might struggle with storms or lack of resources, but every failure taught humans something important. They learned patience, resilience, and innovation. Their determination became legendary even among themselves. They were no longer just a planet, they were becoming a force, a civilization that could reach far beyond what anyone had imagined. The Council, watching from afar, began to notice. Spies reported that humans were expanding faster than expected, building technologies that rivaled Council standards. They were clever, bold, and unpredictable. The same humans they had laughed at now seemed unstoppable. Rumors began to spread. Humans were creating something new, something powerful, something the galaxy had never seen before. Mara stood on a balcony overlooking one of Earth's new spaceports. Ships lifted into the sky, engines glowing, carrying people, supplies, and hope to distant colonies. Young pilots waved at engineers below. Soldiers marched in precise formations. Every human looked determined. The Council had laughed at them, but now humans were writing their own story. They were no longer asking for permission. They were building an empire, one step at a time, one colony at a time, one ship at a time. Earth had begun its journey from rejection to greatness. The Council had banned them, but humans had learned something powerful. Being underestimated was a gift. It gave them the freedom to grow without limits. They had taken the first steps of the human empire, and nothing, not the council, not aliens, not the stars themselves, could stop them. Humans looked to the sky with determination and pride. The galaxy had laughed at them, but laughter would not last forever. Humans were beginning their rise, and the universe would soon notice. Every planet, every star, every challenge was a chance to show that Earth was not weak. Humans were unstoppable. And this was only the beginning. The human empire was growing. Colonies spread across nearby star systems, ships flew faster than ever, and humans were learning new ways to survive and thrive. But the galaxy had not forgotten them. Other alien races began to notice Earth's sudden rise. Some were curious, others cautious, and a few were openly hostile. The council itself was watching closely. They sent a small fleet not to attack but to intimidate. They wanted to see if humans were really as weak as they had thought. The first fleet appeared near one of Earth's distant colonies. It was enormous, with ships covered in strange symbols and bristling with weapons. Humans could see it approaching on their scanners, and at first there was tension. Soldiers stood at attention, engineers checked every system, and pilots prepared for anything. The council fleet expected fear. They expected submission. They expected humans to retreat. But humans were ready. They had trained for this moment. Their ships were faster, smarter, and more flexible than the council had imagined. Pilots used clever maneuvers, avoiding detection and finding weak points in the fleet. Engineers activated new energy shields that glowed like blue fire around each ship. Humans did not attack immediately, they wanted to show strength, not recklessness. The council fleet sent a message, a cold voice that echoed in the human ship's communication systems. You are warned, humans. Leave this system or face consequences. Mara, now a commander of the human empire fleet, responded calmly. We mean no harm. We are explorers, builders, and friends. But we will defend our colonies if needed. Her words were steady, full of confidence. The council fleet underestimated humans. They thought humans were inexperienced and weak. But humans were clever. Using speed, stealth, and strategy, they moved between the council ships, sending signals and creating diversions. They showed that even if they were outnumbered, they could control the battle without firing a single weapon. The council spies on the fleet were shocked. They had expected chaos. They saw discipline, coordination, and intelligence. Humans were not reckless. They were unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. After hours of maneuvers, the council fleet finally realized humans were serious. They had avoided attacks, protected their colonies, and demonstrated advanced technologies. The council commander spoke again, this time with caution. Your species is unlike any we expected. We see your strength. We see your intelligence. But we are still cautious. Humans smiled quietly among themselves. They had not fought the fleet, but they had won respect. That was enough for now. They had shown that Earth was no longer a weak planet. Humans were capable of standing against forces the galaxy had once considered far beyond them. While the council fleet left, humans made first contact with nearby alien races who had watched the standoff from afar. These aliens were small, overlooked planets, many of whom had feared the council's power. Humans approached with diplomacy, offering trade, protection, and friendship. They did not boast or threaten. They offered partnership and respect. Some aliens were skeptical at first, but seeing humans handle the council fleet without panic impressed them. Slowly, alliances began to form. In the colonies, humans celebrated quietly. Children watched the skies, dreaming of distant stars. Soldiers trained harder, knowing one day they might face real battle. Scientists and engineers used the experience to improve ships, defenses, and technologies. Every person felt a growing pride. Earth had been laughed at, banned, and underestimated, but now humans had shown that they could stand strong against the galaxy's most powerful forces. Mara walked through the colony streets, looking at young humans preparing for spaceflight, engineers building new ships, and soldiers drilling with precision. She realized something important. Humans were learning more than technology or strategy. They were learning confidence. They were learning that cleverness, courage, and teamwork could overcome even the most frightening odds. The council fleet's visit had been a test, and humans had passed. But Mara knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of dangers, some hidden, some obvious. Humans had grown stronger, but they could not stop. They had to continue exploring, expanding, and improving. Every colony, every ship, every new alliance was a step toward a future where humans were respected and feared. That night, Mara looked up at the stars from the colony's observation deck. Hundreds of ships moved through space, lights glowing like fireflies in the darkness. Humans were far from home, but they were not lost. They were growing, learning, and building something no one had expected. The council had laughed at them, but the galaxy was beginning to notice. Humans were clever. Humans were brave. Humans were unstoppable. The first contact with the galaxy had proven it. And now, Earth's empire would continue to rise, one step at a time, until no alien race could ignore it. Humans had faced the council's power, and they had not bowed. They had turned fear into strategy, weakness into strength, and rejection into opportunity. The human empire had begun to show its face in the galaxy. The stars were no longer distant dreams, they were the stage for humanity's rise. And the galaxy had only seen the first spark. Humans had survived their first contact with the council fleet. They had shown courage, skill, and cleverness, and the galaxy had begun to notice. But humans were not satisfied. Surviving was only the first step. Now they wanted to grow stronger to make sure that no one would ever underestimate them again. On Earth and in the colonies, work never stopped. Scientists studied alien technologies captured from abandoned council outposts and adapted them to human designs. Engineers built ships bigger, faster, and smarter than before. Some ships could repair themselves while flying, others could cloak from sensors, and a few could launch long-range drones that explored planets before humans even landed. Every day brought new ideas, new inventions, and new possibilities. Soldiers trained harder than ever. They learned to fight together as teams, using strategy instead of relying on brute force. Humans developed new combat simulations that could mimic any possible alien attack. Pilots practiced night maneuvers in space storms, engineers tested shields against strange energy weapons, and soldiers drilled endlessly in zero-gravity arenas. Every human learned that preparation, teamwork, and clever thinking could overcome any danger. At the same time, explorers went further into space than anyone had imagined. They mapped unknown systems, discovered planets with valuable resources, and even found abandoned alien stations filled with technology humans could learn from. Some of these planets were dangerous, storms of acid, shifting gravity, and toxic gases, but humans adapted. They built machines to survive, suits that could withstand anything, and habitats that could endure the harshest conditions. Every new world became a training ground, a laboratory, and a stepping stone for the human empire. Humans did not grow alone. They reached out to other alien races who had been ignored or oppressed by the council. Some were small planets, weak in numbers but rich in knowledge. Some were races who wanted freedom from council control. Humans offered protection, trade, and friendship. They treated these allies with respect, listening to their ideas and learning from them. Slowly, humans built a network of colonies and partnerships across space. These alliances made the human empire stronger because humans knew that strength was not only about ships and weapons, it was about trust and teamwork. The council, watching from afar, began to worry. Reports came back of humans building fleets that could rival theirs, of colonies that were well defended, and of alliances with alien races the council had ignored. They saw humans not as weak and reckless, but as clever, adaptable, and determined. The council began to send scouts, spies, and observers trying to understand the humans. But humans were always one step ahead. Every move was calculated, every action measured, and every new invention gave them more power. Humans also learned to think like the council. They studied alien politics, military tactics, and trade systems. They combined these with human creativity, stubbornness, and courage. They did not copy others, they improved on them. If a council fleet tried to block a trade route, humans found another route or used clever tricks to bypass it. If a planet seemed impossible to settle, humans built machines to terraform it, making it habitable. Every challenge became an opportunity to grow stronger. Back on Earth, Mara watched the Empire expand. Ships left for distant colonies, engineers tested new weapons and defenses, and soldiers trained continuously. Every human felt a growing sense of pride and power. They were no longer just a planet that had been laughed at, they were a civilization on the rise, learning faster, building faster, and thinking faster than anyone expected. News of human strength spread quietly among alien races. Some admired them, some feared them, and some whispered that humans were unpredictable in ways no one could control. Even small victories mattered. A human colony surviving a harsh planet showed resilience. A fleet avoiding detection and completing a mission showed cleverness. Every achievement added to the reputation of the human empire. Humans had learned something important. Strength was not just about power. It was about intelligence, teamwork, and courage. It was about taking risks, learning from mistakes, and never giving up. The more the council tried to watch, predict, or intimidate humans, the more humans adapted, improved, and grew stronger. Their empire was no longer a dream, it was becoming real piece by piece. At night, Mara looked at the stars and smiled. The sky was full of possibilities, full of new worlds to explore, new allies to meet and new challenges to face. Humans were no longer afraid of the galaxy, they were mastering it. The Council had once laughed at them, but now humans were unstoppable. Every colony, every fleet, every new discovery made them stronger. The human empire had grown from a single planet rejected by the Council into a civilization that could compete with the most powerful species in the galaxy. And humans were just getting started. They had learned to fight with their minds, to create with their hands and to rise with their hearts. The stars no longer seemed distant. They were a map of opportunity, a place to build, to explore and to conquer. Humans had grown stronger and nothing, not even the Council itself, could stop their rise. The galaxy would soon see that humans were clever, fearless and relentless. They had turned rejection into power, and the human empire was ready to shine. The human empire had grown stronger than anyone had expected. Colonies stretched across multiple star systems, fleets patrolled the borders, and humans had alliances with alien races the Council had once ignored. Earth was no longer a weak planet. It had become a force that the galaxy could not ignore. The Council watched carefully, sending observers and scouts to see what humans would do next. They had expected chaos, weakness, and failure. Instead, they saw organization, discipline, and innovation. Humans had turned rejection into determination, fear into strategy, and limitations into opportunity. The Council realized that their mistake had been underestimating humans. One day, a Council delegation arrived near a human-controlled system. It was a cautious visit, with ships armed but careful not to provoke conflict. Mara, now one of the leaders of the human empire, met the delegation. The Council wanted answers. They wanted to understand how humans had grown so fast, how they had built fleets, colonies, and alliances that rivaled the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Mara stood tall as she spoke. We do not seek war. We do not seek conflict. But we will protect our colonies, our people, and our allies. We have built an empire through courage, intelligence, and hard work. The galaxy cannot ignore us any longer. Her words were calm but full of authority. The Council delegation listened, surprised by her confidence and clarity. The Council tried to intimidate, showing their massive ships and advanced weapons. But humans were ready. Ships moved in coordinated patterns, shields glowed with energy, and communication drones monitored every signal. Humans had prepared for this moment for years. They did not attack, but they showed strength and organization that even the Council had to respect. After days of negotiations, the Council admitted something they had never expected. Humans were not a threat to the galaxy, they were a new power that demanded recognition. They offered trade agreements, shared knowledge, and a place in the Council. But Mara shook her head. We are not asking for permission. We have built our empire with our own hands. We will work with you as equals, not as subjects. Humans do not bow to those who once rejected us. The galaxy was amazed. Other alien races had watched this encounter, and they began to understand that humans were clever, fearless, and relentless. Humans had created a civilization that was independent, strong, and respected. The empire was no longer just a dream, it was real, and it had proven that no one should underestimate Earth. In the colonies, celebrations were quiet but proud. Engineers worked on new ships, soldiers trained in new tactics, and children listened to stories of humans who had stood against the Council and won respect. Humans understood that their strength was not just in weapons or numbers, but in determination, intelligence, and unity. Even small victories mattered. A human fleet successfully delivered supplies to a distant colony while avoiding detection by dangerous pirates. Scientists discovered new technologies on a planet that had been ignored by other civilizations. Diplomats negotiated trade agreements with alien races that had once been too afraid to speak. Every achievement reinforced the reputation of the human empire. Mara walked through one of Earth's new spaceports and saw ships leaving for distant systems, carrying supplies, explorers, and settlers. Humans were growing in confidence and skill with every journey. Soldiers trained, engineers improved technology, and scientists explored the unknown. The empire was alive, moving forward, and unstoppable. Humans had learned the most important lesson. Strength comes from more than power. It comes from courage, intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to stand for what is right. Humans had been laughed at, banned, and underestimated, but they had turned every challenge into an opportunity. The galaxy had tried to hold them back, but humans had risen above it. The stars were no longer a limit, they were a stage. Humans could travel, explore, and build across the galaxy. Every colony, every fleet, every alliance was proof that humans could create a civilization that no one could ignore. The human empire had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and ingenuity. Mara looked up at the stars and smiled. The galaxy had tried to dismiss them, but humans had proven their worth. They had created an empire that would inspire generations. Every human understood that their success was not just for power, but for the right to exist, grow, and be respected. The council had once laughed, but now it had to listen. Humans had done what no one expected. They had taken rejection and turned it into power. They had taken fear and turned it into strategy. They had taken weakness and turned it into strength. The human empire had become a force of the galaxy, and nothing could stop its rise. From the distant stars to the planets near Earth, humans looked outward with determination. They were explorers, warriors, builders, and dreamers. They were clever, fearless, and relentless. And they had finally shown the galaxy that Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored, it was a civilization that would shape the future. The empire had begun as a response to rejection, but now it had become a symbol of possibility. Humans had earned respect not by asking for it, but by building it themselves. The galaxy had learned a lesson that it would never forget. Never underestimate humans. And so, the human empire stood tall, shining across the stars, a civilization born from rejection, rising through determination and destined to be remembered forever.